Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take, well, a whole stack of information, research, notes, you name it, and boil it down to the key stuff you need to know fast.
Making you well-informed.
Exactly. So, today, we're diving into a term you might hear thrown around quite a bit, centering meditation. And, on the surface, it sounds pretty straightforward, right? Just center yourself.
Yeah, seems simple enough.
But here's where it gets really interesting, I think. It's actually a pretty ambiguous term. It covers two really distinct paths, even though they might overlap sometimes.
And what's fascinating, really, is how both of these paths tap into something very modern, very universal, this search for an inner anchor, in the middle of all the distraction, the chronic stress.
Totally. We all feel that.
Right. So our mission here in this deep dive is to clearly pull these two streams apart. We want to explore their unique purposes, look at the actual techniques, and even get into some of the science and the theology behind them. So by the end, you should have a really clear picture of what centering truly means, whether you're maybe looking for some psychological relief or perhaps going for a deeper spiritual connection.
Great. Let's unpack it then. Where should we start?
Well, let's maybe start with centering as let's call it a secular psychological idea first.
Okay, secular centering. So this is more like techniques drawn from things like mindfulness, maybe sports psychology, wellness traditions.
Exactly. Think of it as a set of tools. And when people talk about getting into a centered state in this context, what they're really aiming for.
Yeah, what is that?
At its core, it's about bringing your full attention, like right here, right now, to the present moment.
Okay.
The whole purpose is to cultivate that inner balance, calm, feeling grounded. It's about quieting that mental chatter that just goes on and on.
Oh yeah, the hamster wheel.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Releasing tension, connecting with your inner self. That's the goal.
And what I found really surprising looking into this wasn't just the general well-being aspect, which is great, but how much it's used as a performance tool.
Absolutely. That's a key point.
Like Olympic athletes, performing artists, serious professionals, they're using these exact methods to handle anxiety, stay laser focused when the pressure is really on.
It's not just about feeling good. Like you said, it's about performing well.
Right, performing good.
And then this calming effect, it actually has a pretty clear neurological basis. We're not just making this up.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, these centering practices, they actually help shift your brain activity. You go from those high frequency, kind of scattered beta waves, the ones linked to that busy, maybe anxious mind.
The left brain noise.
Sort of, yeah. And it shifts towards slower, more coherent alpha waves.
Yeah.
And those are linked to states of calm, well-being, but also heightened focus. More of a right brain integration, you could say.
Alpha waves, okay.
And if we zoom out a bit, connect this to the bigger picture. This secular use is a really interesting example of what you could call functional extraction.
Functional extraction, I like that term. What does that mean exactly?
It means techniques that were historically part of, whole spiritual systems. They get kind of isolated, pulled out, and repurposed for a different goal.
Ah, okay. So you take the tool, but leave the original toolbox behind.
Pretty much. So like the same deep breath focus a monk might use seeking insight. An Olympic diver might use that same technique just to manage pre-competition jitters.
Like totally different goal.
Completely reframed. The aim becomes reducing cortisol or improving focus at work or winning a medal. It's detached from the original spiritual aim, like enlightenment or, union with God.
And that says something about our culture, doesn't it? Valuing these practices for their utility.
It really does. It highlights this broader trend towards seeing contemplative practices, mainly for what they can do for us in our, high pressure, productivity focused lives. It changes the perceived purpose, definitely.
Yeah. That is really insightful. Okay, so for anyone listening now thinking, all right, this utility, this performance boost sounds good. How do I actually do this? Let's get practical.
Yeah, let's talk methods.
What are some of these universal ways to get centered? Things you can try right now. I guess the foundation, the most common starting point, is breath awareness.
Absolutely. That's the gateway for most people. So, to guide you through it briefly, find a comfortable spot. It could be a chair, cushion, even lying down. Spine straight, but, not stiff.
Right.
Gently close your eyes or just soften your gaze. Then take a few deep breaths, Really focusing on the physical feeling, the air coming in your chest or belly rising.
Feeling it in the body.
Exactly. And maybe use a simple anchor, like silently counting to 4 on each exhale. Just something gentle to hold on to.
Okay, simple enough. But the tricky part, I imagine, is the mind wandering off. Mine's probably already thinking about lunch.
Yeah, that's the universal experience. And the key thing is what some call the gentle return.
The gentle return.
When your mind does wander, and it will, that's totally normal. You just gently and crucially, without beating yourself up about it.
No self-criticism.
None. You just guide your attention back to the breath. That repeated act of returning, that is the practice. It's like a mental bicep curl.
I like that. Okay, so breath is foundational. What else? You mentioned body awareness.
Right. Using your physical body to ground your mind. A classic one is the body scan.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
You just systematically bring your attention to different parts of your body, maybe starting at your toes, moving up to your head. Just noticing sensations, maybe imagining breathing into tight spots, softening them. Then there's grounding, simpler still, just feeling your feet flat on the floor, really feeling that connection. Some people visualize energy moving down from their busy head into the earth.
Pulling it down.
Yeah. And even just posture matters. Sitting upright, long spine, relaxed shoulders, maybe a gentle core engagement. It creates this open channel for breath.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got breath, we've got body. What about using our minds, like imagination or sound?
Yep, that brings us to cognitive and sensory techniques. Visualization is a big one.
Like picturing a beach.
Could be. Creating a vivid mental scene of somewhere peaceful, trying to engage all your senses in that image. Or maybe simpler, just imagining a warm, comforting light melting away tension.
Okay.
And then there's mantra or sound. This could be repeating a simple word like calm or peace, silently or even aloud, just to give the mind something to focus on. Or it could just be listening attentively to some calming music or ambient sounds.
Wow. Okay, so there's actually quite a variety of techniques here. It's not just one thing.
Not at all. And what's really interesting is that this variety shows it's a kind of multimodal approach. There's no single best way to center yourself.
Which means you can personalize it, right? Based on what works for you.
Exactly. You can tailor it to your own preferences. Maybe you're more physical, so grounding feels right. Maybe you're very imaginative, so visualization clicks. Or maybe it depends on the kind of stress you're feeling that day.
That flexibility is key.
And the ultimate goal, really, is to make this skill portable, something you can use anywhere, anytime.
Not just on the cushion for 20 minutes.
Right. Think micro practices, like taking just 3 conscious breaths before you jump on a stressful call.
Okay, yeah.
Or doing a quick 1-minute body scan while you're waiting in line at the grocery store. Or even just bringing mindful awareness to routine stuff, like washing dishes or walking to your car. It's about weaving these moments of presence into your day.
Those little resets, they probably add up.
They really do. They prevent that kind of constant stress buildup.
Okay, this is super helpful for understanding that secular psychological side of centering. Now, let's pivot.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about the other stream, centering prayer. This is different, isn't it? It's not just general meditation.
No, not at all. This is a very specific faith-based practice. It comes out of the Christian tradition, and it has really deep historical and theological roots. It's seen by proponents as a profound renewal of Christian contemplation.
Okay, deep roots. Where does it trace back to?
Oh, way back. Proponents explicitly connect it to the Desert Fathers and Mothers in the 3rd and 4th centuries, their practice of silent, non-discursive prayer, sometimes called theria.
Wow.
It also draws heavily on the Benedictine tradition of Lectio Divina, particularly its final stage, Contemplatio, which is about resting silently in God's presence.
Right.
And a really huge influence is that anonymous 14th century classic, The Cloud of Unknowing.
Ah, yes. I've heard of that one.
It gives guidance for what's called apophatic prayer, moving beyond words and concepts, talking about piercing that cloud of unknowing between us and God with a sharp dart of longing love.
Beautiful phrase.
Isn't it? And then you also see connections to the great Carmelite mystics like St. Teresa of Avila, St. John of the Cross, and their writings on what they called infused contemplation.
So quite a serious lineage there. It's definitely not something dreamed up recently.
Not at all.
So then why did this ancient practice have such a big resurgence in the 20th century? What brought it back into the spotlight?
Well, a key figure in renewing general interest in Christian contemplation was the Trappist monk Thomas Merton. His writings were hugely influential mid-century.
Right.
But the most direct catalyst for centering prayer as we know it today was Father Thomas Keating, another Trappist monk.
Okay, Keating. What did he observe?
In the 1970s, he noticed something significant. A lot of young people, many from Christian backgrounds, were turning to Eastern practices. Things like transcendental meditation, TM, or Zen Buddhism.
Why were they doing that?
Keating felt they were searching for a direct mystical experience, a deeper connection that they weren't finding or didn't feel they were finding within their own Christian tradition at the time.
So they felt a gap.
Exactly, a hunger for something more experiential.
So Keating saw this happening. What did he and his colleagues decide to do about it?
Well, Keating, along with two fellow monks, Father William Menninger and Father M. Basil Pennington, they collaborated. Their goal was essentially to repackage this ancient Christian mystical tradition.
Repackage it. How so?
They wanted to make their own rich contemplative heritage more accessible, more practicable for modern people. And crucially, they structured it in a way that mirrored the simple, teachable forms of practices like TM, which were becoming incredibly popular.
Okay. So the structure was intentionally similar to things like TM.
That's a key point, yes. Yeah. And this sort of strategic repackaging, you could call it, explains both why it spread so rapidly.
Right. People recognize the format.
Exactly. But it's also precisely why it generated such intense controversy almost immediately.
Because critics saw it as borrowing too much, maybe losing something essentially Christian.
Precisely. Critics viewed it not as a recovery of authentic tradition, but as a kind of syncretism, an improper blending with Eastern methods. That's a core part of the debate we'll get into.
Okay, definitely want to come back to that controversy. But first, for someone who's curious about the method itself, putting the controversy aside for a moment, what does centering prayer actually involve? You said it's simple.
It is deceptively simple in its mechanics, but it's built on a really profound theological idea. The core intention is not about emptying your mind or concentrating super hard like in some other techniques.
Okay, so what is the intention?
It's framed as an exercise in consent. Consent to God's presence and God's action within you. It's meant to be receptive, relational, fostering a kind of silent communion in Christ.
Consent. That's a very different emphasis.
It is. And the method itself usually follows 4 basic guidelines. The recommendation is typically to practice for about 20 minutes, twice a day.
Okay. What are the 4 guidelines?
All right. First, you choose a sacred word. A short word could be Jesus, peace, love, Abba, shalom, something meaningful to you within the faith. This word acts as a symbol of your intention, your consent to God's presence. It's not for analysis or repetition like a mantra, just a gentle reminder of your intent.
Got it. Symbol of intent. What's second?
Second, you sit comfortably, spine reasonably straight, and gently close your eyes. You settle into silence for a moment, and then you silently introduce the sacred word, just bringing it to mind as the symbol of your consent.
Okay. Third. This is probably where the thoughts come in.
Exactly. Guideline 3. When you become engaged with thoughts, and thoughts are expected, totally normal, could be anything, memories, plans, sensations, you don't fight them. You don't analyze them. You simply acknowledge you've drifted, and then you ever so gently return to the sacred word.
That gentle return again.
Yes. Each return is seen as a renewed act of consent, a fresh yes to God's presence.
Okay. And the 4th guideline.
At the end of the prayer period, maybe 20 minutes, you don't just jump up. You remain in silence with eyes closed for another couple of minutes. It's like a gentle transition back into normal activity.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, you mentioned the sacred word isn't like a mantra. That seems like a really important distinction, especially since critics often equate the two.
It's absolutely crucial, and proponents stress this point constantly. In centering prayer, the word has no power in itself. It's purely a symbol of your personal intention to consent to God. It's a tool of intent, not a tool designed to produce a specific mental effect like a traditional mantra might be.
That's a subtle but significant difference.
Very. And related to this, Father Keating developed a model he called the divine therapy.
Divine therapy, what's that?
His idea was that the stream of distractions we experience during the prayer, all those thoughts, memories, emotions bubbling up, isn't a sign you're failing at the prayer.
Okay.
He saw it as a sign the prayer is working. He called it an unloading of the unconscious. It's like buried psychological material surfacing for healing.
So the distractions are actually part of the process.
According to this model, yes. The idea is you just let them come up and pass by without getting hooked or analyzing them. And in doing so, they're released and sort of healed in God's silent presence.
That's a really unique perspective on dealing with mental noise during prayer or meditation.
It reframes the whole experience, doesn't it?
It really does. So, who are the key people promoting centering prayer today, besides the founders, and how did it grow into this global thing?
Well, beyond Keating, Menninger, and Pennington, figures like Cynthia Bourgeault, Father Richard Rohr, Carl McColman, they've been really instrumental through their writings, workshops, retreats. They've brought it to a wider audience.
Right, I recognize some of those names.
And the main organizational vehicle for spreading it worldwide is Contemplative Outreach, LTD.
Contemplative Outreach.
Yeah, founded by Keating. It's basically a global ecumenical network. They provide standardized instruction through workshops. They help form local prayer groups, offer ongoing support, and have just tons of resources, books, audio, video. They even have a dedicated mobile app now.
Wow, so it's quite organized.
Very much so. It's a well-established movement.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly and talk about the science, or lack thereof. How does centering prayer stack up when we look at research? Maybe start broadly. What do we know about general meditation benefits?
Sure. I mean, there are decades of research now, mostly on mindfulness-based practices. And the evidence is pretty robust for a range of benefits.
Like what?
Things like reduced stress, anxiety, depression, improvements in emotional regulation, focus, attention, overall resilience.
Okay, the psychological stuff. What about physically?
Physiologically, studies show decreases in cortisol, the stress hormone, lower blood pressure, sometimes improved sleep quality.
And in the brain itself?
Neurologically, common findings include decreased activity in the amygdala, which is involved in the fear response.
Right, the fear center.
And increased activity or connectivity in the prefrontal cortex, which handles executive functions like planning and decision-making. Also, often an increase in those alpha waves we talked about earlier linked to relaxed alertness.
Okay, so that's the general landscape for mindfulness. What about research specifically on centering prayer? Does it show similar things?
There has been some research. Studies have shown, for example, that centering prayer practice can significantly decrease people's self-reported stress levels.
Oh, wait.
And interestingly, some studies suggest it can increase what researchers called the collaborative nature of a person's perceived relationship with God.
Ah, that's specific to the practice's aim.
Exactly. And neuroscientifically, some studies using EEG or fMRI have observed patterns like prefrontal cortex activation when the mind wanders and then returns to the prayer anchor, which aligns with the general meditation findings on attention networks.
That sounds pretty positive, but I sense a but coming. Why do people say the evidence base for centering prayer specifically is less extensive than for, say, MBSR? Is there an evidence gap?
There is, and it's important to acknowledge it. While the findings are promising, a lot of the research specifically on centering prayer consists of pilot studies, often with small sample sizes.
Right.
Sometimes the results haven't reached statistical significance, or the study designs lacked rigorous control groups. So the scientific case often ends up relying heavily on extrapolating from the broader meditation research.
Assuming similar mechanisms yield similar results.
Pretty much. There's definitely a need for more large-scale, rigorous, randomized controlled trials, specifically on centering prayer, to really solidify the scientific claims made for it.
So for someone purely focused on, say, evidence-based stress reduction, does that mean they should maybe stick with mindfulness for now, or is the experiential side of CP compelling enough for some, despite the data gap?
That's a really great question for an individual to wrestle with, isn't it? It really highlights that tension between relying solely on empirical data versus valuing personal experience or spiritual resonance. There's no single right answer there.
Yeah, depends on your goals. Now, to get even clearer on what centering prayer is, it helps to compare it to other practices. You already touched on TM, but how does it stack up against standard mindfulness or maybe Vipassana?
Good comparisons to make. Let's take mindfulness first. Centering prayer versus mindfulness meditation. As we said, both often use similar mechanics like returning attention to an anchor, maybe the breath or the sacred word. But the core difference is intention.
Right.
Centering prayer's goal is explicitly relational, consent to God's presence. Mindfulness, in its typical secular form, aims for present moment awareness, usually for stress reduction, emotional regulation, or mental clarity, different destination.
Okay, what about Vipassana? That's insight meditation.
Exactly. Vipassana means insight. So centering prayer is generally considered apophatic, moving beyond thoughts and concepts into a kind of wordless presence. Vipassana, on the other hand, often involves using the mind analytically, observing thoughts, feelings, body sensations with precision to gain insight, to see things as they really are, as the tradition puts it. It often involves detailed body scanning and noting mental events. Different approach.
More analytical versus more receptive.
In a way, yes. And then just to reiterate the comparison with transcendental meditation, because this is where much confusion and criticism arises.
Yeah, let's nail this down.
Centering prayer's sacred word, chosen by the practitioner, has meaning within their faith, acts as a symbol of intention to consent to God. TM's mantra, given by a teacher, is said to be a meaningless sound, personalized, intended to effortlessly settle the mind toward transcendental consciousness. One is an intentional act of prayer and relationship. The other is presented more as a mental technique for deep rest and accessing a specific state.
That distinction, symbol of intent versus meaningless sound for effects, seems absolutely critical to understanding what proponents say centering prayer is.
It's fundamental to their whole framework and their defense against certain criticisms.
Okay. So for you listening, if you decide to try either secular centering or centering prayer, what are some common bumps in the road, challenges you might face? And maybe let's bust some common myths about meditation in general.
Okay, practical challenges first. The number one absolutely universal challenge is the wandering mind.
Yep, we knew that was coming back.
Anyone who's tried to sit quietly for more than 30 seconds knows this. Your brain just loves to wander. But remember, it's not a failure. The practice is the noticing and the gentle returning.
Okay, what else?
Boredom can creep in, restlessness, just feeling fidgety or antsy. Again, totally normal responses to stillness and silence. It's actually an opportunity to just observe that discomfort without immediately reacting to it.
Leaning into the boredom.
Kind of, yeah. And sometimes uncomfortable thoughts or difficult emotions can surface. When you quiet the surface noise, deeper stuff can bubble up.
Right.
In the centering prayer context, remember the divine therapy idea. This is seen as part of the healing process, that unloading. The guidance is generally to just let these thoughts and feelings arise and pass without getting swept away by them.
Easier said than done sometimes, but okay. So those are common hurdles. What about general myths surrounding meditation? Let's debunk a few. Myth number 1, you have to make your mind completely silent. Blank slate.
Totally false. It's probably the biggest misconception. The goal isn't to eliminate thoughts, which is likely impossible anyway, but to change your relationship to them, to not be constantly carried away by them.
Okay, myth number 2, you need to commit huge chunks of time, like hours a day, for it to work.
Also false. Consistency is much more important than duration, especially when you're starting. Even 5, 10, 20 minutes done regularly can make a significant difference. Little and often.
Good to know. Myth number 3, meditation is inherently a religious practice. You have to be religious to do it.
False again. As we've discussed, there are purely secular forms like mindfulness for stress reduction that are all about well-being and mental training. Centering prayer is explicitly religious, but meditation as a whole is not limited to religion.
Right. And myth number 4, you absolutely must sit cross-legged on the floor in some specific, possibly uncomfortable posture.
Definitely false. While certain postures can be helpful, the most important thing is to be stable, comfortable, and relatively upright so you stay alert. Sitting comfortably in a chair is perfectly fine for almost all forms of meditation, including centering prayer. Don't let the posture police scare you off.
Good advice. Okay, now let's circle back to that controversy around centering prayer you mentioned earlier. Given its deep Christian roots, why is it still such a hot topic, particularly in some traditional Catholic or Orthodox circles?
It really is, and the debate can get quite heated. From the perspective of its critics, often from more traditional viewpoints, there are several core concerns.
Lay them out for us.
Okay, first is that accusation of syncretism we touched on. The idea that it improperly blends Christian language and concepts with techniques and philosophies borrowed from Eastern religions, particularly Hinduism or Buddhism via TM or Zen. They see it as watering down or distorting Christian prayer.
Okay, syncretism. What else?
Second, there's the critique of technique versus grace. Critics argue that centering prayer reduces contemplation, which traditionally is seen as a pure gift from God, something you receive, not achieve into a kind of human-devised method or technique. They worry this fosters self-reliance rather than a humble dependence on God's grace.
Technique versus grace.
Got it. Third, some critics dismiss it as basically a form of self-hypnosis, not genuine prayer. They argue it induces an altered state of consciousness, a mental blankness, rather than fostering a relational encounter with a personal God.
Self-hypnosis.
Fourth, there's the argument about misinterpreting the mystics. Critics might say that writings like The Cloud of Unknowing or the works of Teresa of Avila were describing advanced states experienced by spiritual masters, not providing a how-to method for beginners to replicate.
So, taking advanced descriptions as basic instructions.
That's the argument, yes. And finally, some raise concerns about potential spiritual dangers. The idea that intentionally emptying the mind, especially without traditional Christian safeguards like focusing on scripture or specific prayers, could potentially open a person up to non-divine spiritual influences.
Okay, that's a serious concern for some. So syncretism, technique versus grace, self-hypnosis, misinterpreting mystics, and spiritual dangers. It's quite a list. How do proponents of centering prayer respond to these criticisms?
They have strong counter-arguments for each point, as you'd expect. First, on syncretism, they firmly maintain it's a recovery of an authentic, ancient stream within Christian tradition, drawing on the Desert Fathers, Lectio Divina, the Cloud, etc. They say it's not an innovation or an import.
It's finding something lost, not bringing something foreign in.
That's their position. Second, regarding technique versus grace, they emphasize the sacred word is just a symbol of consent, not a technique to force anything. They see the practice as a discipline that prepares our human faculties, our mind, will, heart to be more receptive if God chooses to grant the gift of deeper contemplation. The focus, they say, remains on the relationship, on the intention to be present to God.
So it prepares the ground, but doesn't guarantee the harvest, so to speak.
Well put. Third, addressing the self-hypnosis charge, they highlight the relational intent. It's always directed towards a personal God within a Trinitarian framework. This fundamental aim, they argue, distinguishes it completely from purely psychological techniques or Eastern practices aimed at impersonal consciousness or emptiness.
The intent makes it prayer, not just a technique.
That's the core argument. And regarding the mystics, they'd say while advanced states aren't the immediate goal, the fundamental method of consenting to God's presence in silence is accessible and beneficial for anyone seeking a deeper relationship. Finally, on spiritual dangers, they argue the practice is grounded in Christian faith and intention, which provides the necessary safeguard.
Wow. It's clear there are deeply held convictions on both sides of this debate. It really seems to tap into a fundamental tension in modern spirituality, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It reflects this ongoing dialogue, sometimes a clash between more traditional, perhaps more devotional or doctrinally focused approaches to faith, and more experiential, contemplative, mystical paths. Both sides genuinely believe they are defending authentic Christian prayer.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, so for you, our listener, having heard about both secular centering and centering prayer, the methods, the science, the controversies, if you feel inspired to explore either path further, where can you turn? What are some reliable resources?
Great question. Let's start with resources for general centering and mindfulness, the secular side. Mobile apps are hugely popular. Insight Timer is fantastic. It has a massive library of free guided meditations, talks, music, plus just a simple timer. Calm is another big one, very polished, great for guided sessions on stress, sleep, focus, though much of its content is subscription-based.
Apps are convenient. What about courses or websites?
For a deep dive, check out Palouse Mindfulness online. They offer a full, free, 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction MBSR course based on John Kabat-Zinn's program. Really comprehensive. Websites like mindful.org or the blog Zen Habits are also full of practical tips and articles.
Any key books you'd recommend?
A really accessible starting point is Mindfulness, a practical guide to finding peace in a frantic world by Mark Williams and Danny Penman. It includes an 8-week program with guided audio. Another good one, maybe focusing more on making it effortless, is Bliss More by Light Watkins.
Okay, great list for general mindfulness. Now, what about resources specifically for centering prayer?
If you're drawn to centering prayer, the absolute first place to go is the website for Contemplative Outreach, Ltd. That's contemplativeoutreach.org.
Got it. Contemplativeoutreach.org.
It's the central hub. You'll find detailed information on the method, tons of resources, listings for local chapters and workshops. Getting proper instruction is usually recommended.
Okay. Is there an app for that too?
Yes, they have an official centering prayer app. It's free, has a timer, options for opening and closing prayers, different sounds, very useful for supporting the practice.
And key books for centering prayer.
The foundational text is definitely Open Mind, Open Heart by Father Thomas Keating. It lays out the method and the vision behind it. Another excellent, perhaps more contemporary guide is Centering Prayer and Inner Awakening by Cynthia Bourgeot.
Keating and Bourgeot. Good starting points.
And for community, if you like practicing with others, check out the Meditation Chapel online. They host live, video-based group centering prayer sessions multiple times a day. You can just join in silently from home.
That's a cool resource, practicing together, even virtually.
It can be really supportive.
Okay. Well, as we start to wrap up this deep dive, it's really clear that this term centering meditation, which sounds so simple initially, actually opens up this huge, fascinating world.
Wasn't it?
We've gone from these secular techniques focused on performance, stress reduction, groundedness, all the way to this profound Christian contemplative practice with centuries of history behind it.
And yet both paths seem to respond to that same deep human need we talked about at the start, that need for an inner anchor, for some silence in this incredibly noisy world, for a deeper connection, whether that connection is primarily with oneself or with a transcendent reality.
Yeah, and that intense theological debate around centering prayer, it just underscores how relevant these questions still are. It's a living conversation about what prayer is, what spiritual experience means today.
Absolutely. And hopefully, by understanding the distinct principles, the different intentions, the unique methods of these practices, you, our listener, feel better equipped now, better able to make informed, conscious choices on your own contemplative path, discerning what might best align with your own needs and your ultimate goals.
So as we leave you today, here's a final thought to maybe mull over, something to take with you from this deep dive. How does really understanding the intentions and the origins behind different contemplative practices, knowing why they were developed and what they aim for, how does that shape your own approach to finding inner calm or clarity? And maybe what hidden assumptions might you have been carrying around about the word meditation itself?
Good questions to ponder.